In this presentation, we will set up a new company file. This is an exciting part of the course and often a new part of the course for many people that use Sage 50 Cloud Accounting, because if you go into a company that uses Sage 50 Cloud Accounting, oftentimes it's already going to be set up. Not only that, but you're only going to be working possibly in a segment or a section of it within the accounting department. So now we get to see how it's going to be set up, and that'll help us to see how to set up the process that we are working in, as well as the integration with other areas. Now, this is a section that's going to be a little bit harder to follow along exactly with the free demo file. So if you had access to a fresh setup of the Sage 50 Cloud Accounting, that would be ideal, because then you can walk through this in a step-by-step process with us. However, if you just have access to the demo file, you can still go through the setup process and see how it is set up on your end and still practice as you go within the demo file. So it's time to engage with Sage. Here we are in our Sage 50. We're in the demo file here. This is in the Bellwether Garden Supplies. Now note, when you start a new company file, we're going to start a different company file. You can do so while actually in a different company file. So again, this is something you won't be able to do most likely in the free demo version, but you can follow along with the steps with it. So we're currently in the Bellwether Garden Supplies. If I hit the drop down in the File tab, I could go straight down to the new company here, and that would basically close this company and set up a new company file. Or I can go through the close company first, so I can go down here and let's do that first. I'm going to close this demo company. And then we get this intro screen. Now this is going to be the intro screen you would typically have if you're just going to start the Sage 50 accounting and you had no other company file that you had done before. Either we open an existing file from here, create a new file from this point. We can explore a sample company, which is basically what we were doing. We were exploring the sample company, or convert from another accounting software. So if you're coming from another accounting software like a QuickBooks or something like that, then you would need to go through the conversion process. So we can go to the create a new company here, or again, remember that the drop down up top has the file tab, and then you can go to the new company, and again, you can kind of go to this tab even if you had another company file open. I think most people, when you're starting out, it's better just to close the company file you're in so that you get your mindset correct in terms of, all right, I got Sage open. I'm in a company file within Sage, which is similar to being in an actual, Word document within Word. Let me close up the document and then open up another one. I think that is the best way to go until you get your mindset right with working with different files within Sage if you do have different company files. It is great software that you can use and open and practice with different company files. So if you have access to the Sage 50, or if your company does, then maybe you can get access to a demo file just to practice with, and that's a great tool because you can learn, again, these setup processes. So I'm going to go down here and go to create a new company file. So we're going to create a new company file. It says here, create a new company file. This wizard will walk you through the creating a new company. You will be asked about your company name and address, business type, accounting method, cash or accrual, accounting periods, and fiscal year. So we're ready for that. We're ready for those questions. We're going to go back up top. I'm going to say this is going to be Great Guitars is going to be our mock company name here. Then we have the business type. So the business types would include the corporation, the S corporation, partnership, limited liability company. So I'll keep it up here with the corporation. Again, you want to check and see what, of course, your company type will be, how you set up the company. Are you a sole proprietorship, a corporation, S corporation, or LLC? And then I'm going to enter the address. So this is going to be, of course, a mock address. I'm going to put in here 1140 Tower Road, and then we're going to say here that the zip code then, the city is going to be Beverly Hills. I missed the S. Beverly Hills with an S on the end of it. And then it's going to be California, and the zip code 90210. So this is actually a house for sale in Beverly Hills if you are interested or in the market for it. It's only $29 million. And this is going to be the county of Los Angeles. I'm going to put the phone number as the 555-555-5555, and then the fax. I'm not going to include a fax. Then we have the federal ID number. I'm just going to put the 999999 in the federal ID. I'm not going to include a state ID. Obviously, if you had state ID, you want to check that out. Note that the federal ID would be something that you can get from the IRS. So even if you're a sole proprietor, for example, you may want to get a federal ID number, an EIN number. You definitely will need one. It'll be required if you have employees But even if you're like a sole proprietor and you don't have employees, then you may still want the federal ID number. And so you can get that, and that would be at the IRS. You could look into it with the IRS website. And then, so obviously the federal government then thinks of everybody as a number. So we as individuals are a number, our social security number, and the companies are a number as well, which is the EIN number or federal identification number. And then the state thinks of us as a number too, different government entity, so they obviously think of everybody as a number, but it's a different number. So whatever state you are in, then you'll have the state ID number, and you'll have to know what that is too, so you can enter that information here. And state unemployment ID, so again, if you have the state unemployment ID, I'm not going to enter it now. The only required field, just for the practice problem, as you note, is going to be this item up top because it has these red asterisks. However, it's nice to have the address in here because the address will be helping to use to populate the forms, such as like an invoice or something that you're going to be sending to someone, so that you would like the contact information so that they can hopefully pay you by either mail or give you the money. They can contact you by the phone number or fax. So you're going to probably want that information on here so that you can add it to those contact informations with your employee, as well as generate any automatic contacts that can be done within the system. And then the website and the email address, again, two things I'm not going to put in at this point, but they can be useful because they can help you to integrate the system to send documentation out from the system, as well as give that contact information and advertise your website every time you send an invoice and whatnot, and also give that return email address each time as well. So I'm going to keep that for now, and then I'm going to say next. Select a method to create your company. Use a simple business type that closely matches your company. This is the most commonly used, and this is what we're going to use. The other methods being, however, copy settings from an existing Sage 50 accounting company. So if you have another accounting company that's already set up and you want to kind of mirror it, possibly have a parent company and subsidiary companies, you can use that method. Convert a company from another accounting program. So if you have other accounting programs such as like a QuickBooks or something like that, and you need to like expand to more options with something like a Sage, then you can use that option. Build your own chart of accounts, designed for accountants and advanced users only. So if you're saying, hey, I don't need the system to create a chart of accounts for me, then I just want to build it from scratch so that my accounts match exactly what my needs are, then you can do that here. Most people, when they're starting out, if you're not like an expert in it, and even if you are, it might be useful to see the chart of accounts that's provided by the Sage accounting software, because it'll be easier to set up. Number one, some of the accounts will already be there, and it'll be a bit more standardized, so you can kind of get an idea of what Sage feels is a standard set of chart of accounts, and then make adjustments from that point. So that's what most people will do. That's what we'll do here. So I'm going to say next, and then we have the select the business type. So each business type has a recommended chart of accounts, which is the list of categories accounts to which you assign transactions. Accountants sometimes refer to the chart of accounts as the general ledger. Now we actually have a music store. Now I'm not going to select this, even though it fits what we're going to be working with pretty closely, because I want to use more of a generic one that might fit more people, a generic kind of chart of accounts. But just note that the selection, the types of industries, is fairly extensive, and you want to make sure that when you're thinking about the type of business that you have, are you dealing with inventory or not? So if you're dealing with inventory items, you want to make sure that when you look at the chart of accounts, there's some kind of inventory accounts over here, such as the inventory for instruments and stock and whatnot for our music store. So again, this is a little too detailed for us because I want to keep it a little bit more generalized, and therefore I'm going to go up top to the simplified types. And the simplified types, I'm just going to pick a retail company. So if you want just a general kind of chart of accounts that you can then grow from, this might be a good method to go. In other words, if you pick a more specific industry, like if I picked music store, then it's going to give me a more inventory items for a typical kind of music store. And maybe I'm a niche type of music store where I don't have all those accounts. Maybe I don't want like 5 inventory accounts, but I want 1 inventory account that it's set up properly with inventory, the way an inventory account is supposed to be set up, so that I can then mirror that if I want to add more detailed inventory accounts. So even if you have, in other words, a more detailed type down below, you may be okay. You may want to go with a more simplified, basically, chart of accounts up top to give you just kind of the groundwork, the ground basis, and not too much detail that you can then expand on. So, and then if you want an inventory item, just make sure that you're dealing with something with inventory so you can work with that. If you're not dealing with inventory, you want a service type of company so that it doesn't set up the added needs you might have, related to inventory. And then you have the manufacturing company. Again, if you're making something and you're going to be dealing with like work in process type of information, then you want to make sure that you're picking up the manufacturing company so that you have that processing kind of system within it. So I'm going to pick the retail company here, which will include the chart of accounts to the right, and you could glance through those chart of accounts if you so choose. So all these accounts will be included for us automatically. So then I'm going to go next and then choose an accounting method. The accounting method defines when you recognize income and expenses. So the two common accounting methods, the two kind of extremes, are the accrual method and the cash method. You pretty much always, I would almost always choose the accrual method. And now, that doesn't mean that you're not like doing things kind of more on a cash basis method. Even if you're taking all your information just from the bank feeds and it's all completely cash based, I would still pick an accrual method, even though the data input that we're entering is basically on a cash method. So just note that accrual is pretty much the default. There's going to be, the exception is fairly rare, I would think, when you'd want to go from a cash basis to a cash basis method within the setup process. Again, that doesn't mean that when you actually enter your data into the system that you don't enter it more on an accrual basis. You could enter it straight from the bank, which would be a complete cash basis system, and that would be fine, and you could still pick basically the accrual method. So keep that in mind. Accrual, most companies choose this. Income is recorded when sales occur, regardless of when you actually receive the money. Expenses are recorded when you receive goods or services, even though you may not pay the bills for them until a later date. And then under the cash method, income is recorded when you receive money. Expenses are recorded when you pay the bills. So in other words, if you're entering bills or invoices, like if you enter an invoice, the accrual method is going to record it when you enter the invoice, even though you haven't got the cash. And so usually the accrual method means that you're going to record revenue when you enter the invoice, which will increase the sales and increase the accounts receivable, not cash. And under the cash method, there is no accounts receivable and there is no accounts payable, right? There are no accounts receivable and accounts payable on a cash method because those are accrual, basically, accounts. So you wouldn't be recognizing under the cash method revenue until you actually receive the money. So note that if you're on an accrual method and you just don't use invoices because you make sales at the point of time and you just receive money and you do the work at the same point in time, then you're not going to enter an invoice. You're just going to enter the receipt of cash at that point in time. So even if you mark off the accrual method, it's still going to record revenue on a cash basis because you're not going to be entering invoices. You're not going to have an accounts receivable in that case. You would just be entering sales receipts, and that it would record revenue when you get the payment because that happened at the same time you did the work. So in any case, I would typically go with the accrual there. I'm going to go next and then choose a posting method. Posting is the process of recording a transaction on your company's books. So real time, most companies choose this. Each transaction is posted as it is entered and saved. Batch transactions are saved, then posted as a group in a second step. So I think most people, like they say, would be choosing the real time. We're going to keep it with the real time there. Choose an accounting period structure. Accounting period are units of time that divide your fiscal year for reporting purposes. 12-month accounting period. Again, most companies in the U.S. will be having 12 months for their accounting period. So choose the first period for your fiscal year. A fiscal year is your accounting year defined by when you open and close the books. Most companies start their fiscal year in January. Companies with a more seasonal business may choose to start their year in another month. So in other words, we have a calendar year which ends in December, it starts in January. Fiscal year could differ, but most companies still have a fiscal year that lines up to the calendar year. Now, don't get mixed up because oftentimes when I see this, I kind of feel like it should be asking when the year ends, not when it starts. To me, it seems kind of funny, but I think maybe when it's the first, but I don't know. But just remember, we're talking about when it starts, not when it ends here. So you're picking January. If you're a normal calendar year in, it starts in January, ends in December, you're picking January. So we want January. Most companies start in January, and we're going to pick the year of 2020. So I'm going to say, next, you are ready to create your company. After you click finish, your company data file will be created. After that, you will set up the setup guide, which will help you enter your first records into Sage 50. All right, exciting moment. We're going to go ahead and hit finish here and let it set it up for us. And there it is. Just took like a minute or so, and we're back here. So then we got the setup guide will pop up for us. The setup guide helps you get started with the Sage 50. It's best to use this guide before entering any transactions into Sage 50. We recommend that you follow the order below, but it's okay to skip a step if it doesn't apply to your business. To continue, click on the icon or the name of a section. So then we got the customers, the jobs, the vendors, the inventory, the employees, the chart of accounts, and so on and so forth. I'm going to go ahead and close this, and you can get back into it. The OK to exit your Sage 50 to return to the setup guide, select file and setup. So I'm going to say OK. And again, you can open that again by going to the File tab up top, and then you go to the Setup Guide. And that's what it just told you when you closed it. Now, it's interesting because it's also in the Help menu, which is where I would tip was going before, which is the Help menu. And then you go to the Setup. So the Help menu and then the Setup. Where did it go? So it's in Getting Started. Getting Started goes up to that Setup Guide. Okay, so in any case, I'm going to close this back out and say OK. And so now we have our basic structure that we saw in the demo version, but a nice clean structure at this point that we can start adding data to. One of the first things I'll basically check is usually go to the lists up top and then go to the chart of accounts. This is the way I typically go to the chart of accounts. So I typically think of chart of accounts as like a lists now because of software like Sage and QuickBooks Desktop that kind of trained me to think of the chart of accounts as a list. So here's the list that they gave us. So nothing's in there in terms of currency. In terms of money yet, no transactions have happened, but then you have our nice chart of accounts. And note that Sage does give you account numbers over here too. So they give you the account IDs, they got the description, and then the type. So just realize that you want to spend, if you're not familiar with the chart of accounts, you kind of want to spend some time with the chart of accounts and just realize the categories that they're in, because it's going to be grouped by the type of account, which is going to be assets, liabilities, equity, income, and then expense. And then within assets, it's going to be grouped by kind of more liquid assets. So cash type of accounts, receivables, inventory, other assets, and then fixed assets, which are less liquid. Then it goes to liabilities, starting with accounts payable, and then other current liabilities, long-term liabilities, then the equity section, then the income statement. Now we're on the income statement, income, cost of goods sold, and then all of our other expenses down here. Most of the time when you're entering transactions, it's basically going to be adding an expense. If you have to add anything, it'll be an expense. But the general rule here, you want to be careful just to know when you have to add something. But the general rule is going to be that we're not going to add, we're going to look for an account that's already been set up in our default accounts before we kind of just go to adding a new account. And then if it's not in the default, then we go in and we add the new account. And when we do so, we want to be cognizant of, be aware of the account numbers so that we can select the appropriate account numbers. If you haven't worked with account numbers before, just get an idea. You could see kind of the account ID numbers have, meaning the assets are in the 100s, or 1000s, and then the liabilities in the 2000s, and so on and so forth. So if you want something down here in the expenses, then you want to put it somewhere in, the 6000 type section of the expenses. You also want to be careful not to add an account that's going to be like, if this was 6351, you probably don't want to be picking 6352, this is 6350, you probably don't want 6351. Why? Because what if you want another account that's in between those two? You can't really do it because now you haven't left any space. So be careful to leave space when you're working with the account numbers so that when you add new stuff as things grow, you can do so without getting a mess of account numbers. That's going to be it for now. We'll continue with this next time. Let's get out of here.